Edgar stood shivering in the bitter cold, wrapping his arms tightly around himself in a futile attempt to keep warm. Each icy gust of wind bit into his face, turning his nose a rosy red and leaving his cheeks stinging. His toes, ensnared in damp socks, were beginning to go numb, and he stamped his feet in a desperate bid to restore some feeling to them. He glared at the warm glow spilling out from the windows of the house, a golden promise of comfort he could not reach. "Dratted cat," he muttered through chattering teeth. His mind was ablaze with anger, but it was no match for the cleverness of Thomas O'Malley. That alley cat had once again outwitted him, and it made Edgar boil with frustration. Inside, however, the atmosphere could not have been more different. The warm crackling fire painted soft orange shadows that danced on the walls, and the scent of freshly polished wood mingled with the faint aroma of cream. Duchess sat elegantly on the hearthrug, her white fur gleaming as she lovingly groomed Marie. The little kitten purred in contentment, her bright blue eyes half closed in bliss. Nearby, Berlioz was busily pawing at the tassels of a nearby cushion, batting them playfully with his tiny paws. Meanwhile, Toulouse, with his artistic flair, was intently drawing shapes on the rug with one claw. His eyes darted back and forth between Thomas and the glowing fire, admiration shining in his expression. "Mr. O'Malley," Toulouse said finally, his voice filled with wonder. "That was the best trick ever." Edgar didn't see it coming at all. Thomas, stretched luxuriously on the rug, gave a lazy flick of his tail and grinned. His green eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he chuckled softly. "Well, kiddo," he said, his voice smooth and relaxed, "when you've lived on the streets as long as I have, you learn a trick or two." He winked at Toulouse, then extended his paws toward the fire, relishing the delightful warmth. "Now, what do you say we make this cozy little scene even better?" "Duchess, my dear," he said, turning to the graceful white cat, "is there any chance you've got some cream in the pantry?" Duchess chuckled, her soft laugh like the chiming of silver bells. Her eyes sparkled as she stood up with effortless grace. "I think that can be arranged, Thomas," she replied, her tone playful yet affectionate. "After all, you've earned a little reward tonight." With her tail held high, she padded toward the kitchen, leaving the kittens wide-eyed with excitement. Outside, Edgar continued pacing back and forth in the snow, muttering furiously to himself. "I'll freeze out here before they let me in," he growled. His boots crunched loudly in the snow as he stumped back and forth, his breath puffing out in frosty clouds. His mind was spinning with anger. "That alley cat is probably stretched out by the fire, laughing at me," he fumed. But then, as his frustration mounted, a sudden thought struck him. His eyes lit up with the tiniest glimmer of hope. "The back door," he exclaimed, slapping his forehead. How could he have forgotten? Without wasting a second, Edgar trudged through the deep snow, his movements slow and labored as the icy drifts tugged at his legs. His boots left a clear trail of footprints behind him, winding through the garden toward the back of the house. Meanwhile, Duchess had returned to the cozy scene by the fire. On her back, she balanced a small tray with practiced elegance. The tray held a saucer of cream for Thomas and warm milk for the kittens, the steam curling enticingly from the cups. "Here we are," she announced with a gentle smile, carefully setting the tray down on the hearthrug. Thomas purred deeply as to lap up the cream. His tail curled contentedly around his paws, and his green eyes sparkled with pleasure. "This is the life," he declared between sips. "A warm fire, good company, and a little something to take the chill off. What more could a cat ask for?" Marie tilted her head curiously, her bright eyes fixed on Thomas. "But Mr. O'Malley," she asked in her sweet, high-pitched voice, "what if Edgar gets back inside? Won't he be angry with you?" Thomas let out a low, rumbling chuckle, his whiskers twitching with amusement. "Let me tell you something about Edgar, kiddo," he said, leaning closer to the kittens as if sharing a secret. "He's all bark and no bite. Besides," he added with a sly grin, "I think he's got enough to deal with outside right now." As if on cue, a muffled crash and a loud groan echoed from the back of the house. Edgar, in his determination to sneak in through the back door, had slipped on an icy patch hidden beneath a thin layer of snow. He landed flat on his back in a snowdrift, his arms flailing as he struggled to sit up. Snow clung to his coat and hair, and his face turned a deep shade of red, not just from the cold but from his mounting humiliation. "That alley cat," he bellowed, shaking his fist at the house as he brushed snow from his coat. Inside, the kittens erupted into fits of giggles. Toulouse rolled onto his back, clutching his little belly with his paws, while Berlioz and Marie laughed so hard that tears sparkled in their eyes. Even Duchess, ever poised and composed, couldn't suppress a soft chuckle. "Oh dear," she said, casting a playful glance at Thomas. "It seems Edgar is having quite the adventure tonight." Thomas smirked, licking the last drops of cream from his whiskers. "He brought it on himself," he said with a casual shrug. "Sometimes you've just got to let folks learn the hard way." Outside, Edgar finally managed to struggle back to his feet, shivering and grumbling under his breath. His clothes were soaked, his boots were filled with icy water, and his face was a picture of misery. Limping back to the front of the house, he muttered darkly, "That blasted cat. I'll get him next time." But just as he reached the front door, a sudden gust of wind sent another flurry of snow cascading from the roof above. Plump! The snow landed squarely on his head, leaving him covered from head to toe in a fresh layer of white. The kittens, who had been peeking through the window, dissolved into laughter once more. Even Thomas couldn't help but grin as he watched Edgar's misfortune unfold. Duchess shook her head fondly, her voice tinged with amusement. "Thomas, my dear," she said softly, "you certainly know how to keep life interesting." Thomas stretched luxuriously on the hearthrug, his green eyes gleaming with warmth and satisfaction. "It's all part of the charm, Duchess," he replied with a deep purr. "Now, how about we enjoy the rest of this cozy evening? Let Edgar cool off outside. He could use the fresh air." As the fire crackled and the storm howled outside, the little family nestled closer together, their hearts warmed by the bond they shared. Outside, Edgar sat dejectedly on the porch, covered in snow and plotting his next move. Deep down, however, he knew he would never truly outsmart the quick-witted Thomas O'Malley.